All right, we're on board. Well, welcome to this month's edition of Hump Day Hangout. This is Bill Gustin from the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department coming to you live from the live wet laboratory, fire suppression system laboratory of Sprinklermatic University, which is located just west of Fort Lauderdale. And our guests today, which will be discussing our topic of fires that originate or spread on the outside and get into the structure, is our the second oldest man in the room. I've got him by a couple of days, I think. Bobby Halton, Jason Hovelman from right outside St. Louis, the Florissant Valley Fire Protection District. This guy here, Daryl Liggins, from the other coast. So I'm on the East Coast, Daryl's on the West Coast in Oakland, California, and I don't see Jimmy, but I think he's coming live from Fighting 43.
He's there.
He's gone?
He's here, Billy. We got him.
Okay, I don't see Jimmy, but Jimmy, at any moment you can get a run. I understand that, and that's cool. Hey, before we go any further, wow. What an amazing FDIC. Now, I'm an old guy and it takes a lot more for me to get excited about things, but I was thrilled like I was a little kid. And it was so good to have that feeling back of being at a full scale FDIC. Yes, we had a good FDIC scaled down version in July or August. And considering what we had, it was wonderful, but it was just so great to see everybody there, and what a learning experience. And you walk away feeling energized again about the job, and it gets our heart and our head in the job. And Daryl, you were conspicuously absent there, Mr. Daryl, out there on the West Coast. Was it a problem, Daryl, that they wouldn't let you across the east-west border? I think they call it the Rocky Mountains. Was there anything? You're muted, Daryl.
No, I'm sorry I missed this year's FDIC. It's every time I have been, it's been a wonderful event. Anybody out there that has not been and you are in the fire service, it's definitely an event you have to make that pilgrimage out to Indianapolis and have that experience. It's the best minds in the fire service all in one place, one time a year.
Yep. And Jimmy, you're here with us. You say you're at Fighting 43. I don't see Jimmy, but do I hear you?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you, Cap. Hello, everyone. Today.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, hello, Cap. Hello, everybody. No, I am off today. 43 was yesterday, so no runs,
wonderful.
No interruptions today.
Now, did you make any parking lots yesterday?
No, there was no parking lots yesterday, Cap. No fires yesterday, but a busy shift. We're having that heat wave here in the Midwest. It was 90 degrees here in Chicago. So
you know what I was thinking about the other day is the largest MCI in Chicago history was the marathon where you had 400 casualties. Man, you guys go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, and if you can remember too, the heat wave, which was they called it a natural disaster in 1995, where
yes,
I think it was almost 900 people perished in the city of Chicago over a warm spell that spread over about a week's time.
Yes, and I publicly, now that we're on the air, well, before we do that, let's thank our good friends at Key Hose. That's keyhose.com. I say this every installment: take the Key Challenge. Try their combat ready, their combat sniper that flows around 160 gallons a minute. Excuse me. And then their True ID hose, which wears like iron. I recently had a chance to get my hands on the FDNY spec hose, which I believe is a tweaked version of the combat ready. Very robust, very rugged hose. Not cheap, but don't go cheap on hose. So thanks to our friends, and a shout out to friends, and especially Mark Lighthill and Dave Hibben, who was crazy enough to stay on DC Engine 10 for over 10 years, running about 10,000 runs a year. Now, one of our members who is absent is Dan Shaw, who I kid him every month that, you're getting another promotion. Well, guess what? He's getting another promotion. That guy must have more meatballs on his gold badge. Well, we call them meatballs, but they're actually bugles. We always say, hey, who's got the most meatballs on the badge? Well, that guy's got enough meatballs for a hero's sub. I have to tell you, he's probably going to end up being it, but a brilliant guy. And it was great to see him at FDIC, especially with his sidekick, Doug Mitchell. So our topic this month, we're going to continue with attic fires, but from a different angle. That there has been a rash of fires that have started on decks and balconies in this country. Why? Because the smoking family member has been relegated to the balcony or the rear deck. And consequently, the cigarette is discarded in a potted plant or some other way spreads to patio furniture, which is nothing more than solidified gasoline. That polyethylene faux rattan, polyurethane foam padding, polyvinyl chloride seat cushion cover is nothing but solidified gasoline. And when it burns, it liquefies into molten, flaming, dripping goo that not only can auto-expose floors above, but can also spread to balconies below or below the deck because it drips. So, Jimmy, you and I have discussed this before. In my dad's day and in your day in the city of Chicago, you have back porches, you have gasoline siding. And in modern America, you have the rear deck and you have the vinyl siding. So I figured since we are here at, I am here at Sprinkler-Matic, which is a fire suppression contractor in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area, just out of their graciousness has built a wet lab that is just absolutely amazing. It's called Sprinkler-Matic University. Kyle Smith, our brother Kyle Smith from Cobb County, has actually traveled here specifically to see it. So they installed a fire suppression system for a outside in fire. This would be a fire on the helipad of a extremely tall, I don't know how many story building. I think it's well over 60 stories in downtown Miami. And it is a very impressive video on the test of this foam system. So if Peter, could you run that video? Well, that was pretty impressive. That happens to be in the city of Miami. City of Miami Fire Department is being challenged like never before with a building boom that is incredible. They have the tallest building south of Manhattan, and it's a smaller department than Miami-Dade County, but the population is dense, and they are building up and up and up. And investors from all over the world are buying these extremely high-end condominiums and offices. So Peter, great job. I have to mention, this video was shot by a videographer, Scott Fink from Sprinkler-Matic, and an awesome video. You know, I wonder what normal people find exciting and interesting, because this is what I find. I mean, come on, any firefighter has got to love something like that, because we all like gadgets. And as we get older, the size of our toys become more expensive and larger. So anyway, thanks to Scott Fink for some brilliant video. And Peter, you pulled it off, my brother. Okay, do we have some pictures that you can bring up? It doesn't have to be in any specific order. Peter, for us to discuss.
Yeah, stand by, Bill. I'm trying to do this thing.
All right. Hey, Peter, let me ask you, just between you and me and like 10 other thousand people that are watching, do I stress you out?
Never, Bill.
Don't ask me that question.
Look at you. Oh, man. Yeah, I put a strain on you. Hey, listen.
Bill, while we're waiting for some of the photos.
Yes, go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, you mentioned the Sprinkler-Matic University, and I think many of us have seen your videos from there. If anybody listening wants to attend that or see that site, is that open to the public, or do they have a schedule of classes?
Yes. Hey, understand something about with the building boom in the state of Florida, these suppression contractors are not competing for jobs. There's more work. They compete for skilled labor. I make this joke every so often. Don't ever get drunk and get in an arm wrestling contest with a sprinkler fitter, because they will break your arm. Okay. Now, perfect example of two lessons. There's two teaching moments right here. One is, it's clear as a bell, and there's a fire raging overhead in the attic. Second, where the hell is the hose line? This happens everywhere. Put a pike pole in the hands of a young firefighter, and he or she sees fire overhead, and they start pulling. When you're opening up the damper of a wood burning stove, how many Underwriters Laboratory tests do we have to conduct to convince people that you got to have the water when you open up a fire in a concealed space? Does anybody else have any comments on this particular picture? Okay, let's go to the next one. All right. This is a McMansion, and the nemesis to firefighters is the multiple hips, valleys, gables, turrets. Before we went on the online, we were talking about these portable master stream devices, which are great. They can hydraulically blast through a drywall ceiling and get to the fire underneath a roof that is designed and intended to shed water. This is where the water needs to go. Now, if you're flowing upwards of 500 gallons a minute and you don't see an appreciable reduction in the volume of fire that is up in that attic, you're not hitting the fire. You're hitting a converging roof line or a valley or an AC unit. Move the device. That's the beauty of these portable devices. Move it and try it from a different vector. Anybody else? Daryl?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think we'd agree. These streams are not going to have any effect on the fire. It's a bit of a water show at this point. I see the front door is closed. Those hose lines have to get inside to have an effect, pulling ceiling and getting it from underneath. We're just seeing some of the symptoms of the main body of fire. And if there's any chance at saving this, it's got to be from the interior.
Yeah, they've got their work cut out for them. And now,
Yeah.
Bill, is this a building under construction? Because
yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. And it's pretty hard to pull the ceiling when it's a lofted ceiling 10, 12 feet over your head. Can we see the next picture, Peter?
Yeah, that's a good point, Bill. The length of pipe poles that some agencies are carrying, they may have to be reconsidered. I know we have 16-foot hooks for some of the vaulted ceilings and buildings, but a lot of the newer large McMansions, if those are newer to your community, you may have to start thinking about adding some longer pike poles.
Would you put that picture back up of the deck burning? I'm not going to tell you what department this is, but this chief took me to this house and they said, we screwed up. We took the line through the front door because that's the way we've always done it. With back porches, Jimmy, with combustible large decks. We've always taken the line in through the front door with the best of intentions of limiting the extension into the house itself. But in reality, what is the reality, Jimmy? Let's say these are Chicago back porches and the line goes in through the front door.
Yeah, Cap, what I wanted to mention on this too is that, it's kind of like funny you say that. I refer to that as the A-side syndrome or plagued A-side syndrome, where that line is always got to go in the front door to protect means of egress. But on the contrary to that, what's most important is that you do a good sizable, a good 360 on that. Remember location, locate that fire. What this fire needs is some quick water on it right now. This is a very common occurrence as we're seeing from this. We got a couple other pictures in the Rolodex here, some back porches, which is nothing but virtual lumberyard. Dried up wood, open air, just a tinder box. And especially with the weather changing, we talked about that earlier with all the patio furniture, the barbecuing, the cigarettes, you name it. These things take off before you know it. But again, this is a very common problem with us, and I'm sure that other people that are listening as well. These back porches also serve as a second means of egress. To take note of that too, not to mention too, the other hazards are on this deck too, at LPG tanks, other flammables, other dangers on that deck as well. But very common occurrence, do to 360, get some big water, flow some big water on this.
Well, I think the 2 points go together really well here about the 360, obviously getting an idea of where the fire location is, and then hose line placement, right? Hose line placement is probably responsible for saving more lives, correct hose line placement, than any other tactic we do. So, knowing where your fire originated from or where the seat of the fire is can be incredibly helpful. I like this picture because it looks like, whether you take the Carmel fire in New York back in 2012, where the young man discarded the cigarette butt in the mulch and ended up killing his entire family. It was a new home. You can see the vinyl here peeling off. And what happens is that fire gets in underneath that vinyl, gets in the moisture barrier, hits that OSB, and then oftentimes the soffits are vinyl as well.
Bingo.
And so that's what I think we see peeling down here. Looks like a big piece of vinyl, and
Yes,
if
it
that
is.
melts and ignites, it's that surface fire that you see there is pretty easy to get a handle on. But with this particular picture, it looks to me like there seems to be a broken window, maybe, Bill, on the second floor there. And we've got some extension in. So that's directly over the garage area, which is it's an interesting layout, and it's a pretty interesting deal. But it looks like the fire really only has maybe a quarter of the building. Am I reading it wrong? Because it doesn't look like it goes all the way to the full length of the side of the house there.
It's a high-end house. It's a high-end house.
Big place.
Peter, if we could go to the next picture, I think we see the aftermath of this.
While he's looking at that, Bill, these were contributing factors in two pretty well-known fires, one on line of duty death in Prince William County, and then some close calls in Loudoun County.
Kyle Wilson.
Yeah, Kyle Wilson in Prince William. And they also are dealing with wind and some other challenges, but we see these a lot in the wintertime from people throwing ashes from their fireplace to the yards or in the burn pits. And there's always in the wintertime, we will get a lot of these kinds of fires, or frequent, due to those getting into the yard and spreading to the vinyl siding or other combustible materials.
The other thing too, Jason, in the winter months, we see it with extension cords, either for heating devices for pets, or we see it for Christmas lighting, where they don't realize that these extension cords can generate some pretty high temperatures pretty quickly. And although, if you have a dry winter, you could have mulch, or you could have lawn debris and such that can communicate fire pretty quickly to a structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Can we go to the next picture, Peter?
That's a big house.
It is. That is a big house, and it's a shame. But hey, they owned it. They made a mistake. They learned from it, and they passed the lessons learned on. That was one thing about Chief Brunacini.
Was this a cigarette fire? Was this a cigarette fire, Bill?
No, I think it was a barbecue.
Okay.
Next. You got another picture there for us. All right. This is the attic of a very large high-end home that, as you see in the foreground, is a girder truss. A girder truss is a main structural element that other elements, in this case, the roof trusses at right angle, have its bearing on. So as you see, there's a converging roof line there, where if you had the fire develop in between the two layers of OSB, yeah, OSB is an SOB. Okay, wood chips and glue. Fire gets up in there and you hit it with a 500-gallon-a-minute stream from below, and you don't see any appreciable reduction. It's because you got to come in from a different angle. Also, if you lose this girder truss, the whole portion of this roof is going to collapse. Also, metal joist hangers. And I know that, Jason, you've had me in your jurisdiction. We went and looked at some high-end homes where I saw this. And interestingly, you had something, we have our hurricane straps in South Florida. And if you remember, Jason, I asked you, what are these straps down at the bottom where the studs meet the bottom plates? And what was your answer?
The straps in the trusses?
Yeah, at the bottom. It was seismic.
Oh, yeah. Right. The seismic control. Yeah, and you'll see that we are in a seismic zone because of New Madrid.
Daryl, you think San Francisco Bay Area has had earthquakes? They have. But the big one is predicted to be in the Midwest. If it ever happens, God help us.
The other interesting thing about this photo is that all of that air duct stuff that you see there, that's all held up by these like vinyl straps. So if you have flame impingement in there, and that stuff, those are those entanglement hazards, Jimmy, that we were talking about recently. If oftentimes we'll go into those attic spaces because they're in the modern homes, there's man doors or a pull down in order to get to the fire. but you got to be aware that you can get tangled up in that stuff, because as that wrapping that you see there, which is just plastic, melts away, it's like getting tangled up in a slinky, and
Yes.
it could really be a big problem.
I almost got killed in a church on the second floor. Myself and Pat Westmoreland got wrapped up in this, and we were praying to the good Lord that we dove down the stairs. I can't believe that it's our halfway mark. Hey, boss, we don't have a hard and fast ending time today, do we? Okay, good. All right. I want to mention our friends at Key. That's keyhose.com. Take the Key challenge. If you want to put your hose to the test, put it in the hands of fire recruit instructors. Well, it will be dragged over pavement all day, every day of the week. And there's no finer place to test out your hose and than on the drill ground. So I endorse Key because I have it. Yes, sir. Can I go ahead, boss?
So if I love these pictures, I just want to talk tactics for a minute. So
Yes.
Jimmy, when we were talking, and Jason, Daryl, like where I work now, when we see one of these outside in, or what we suspect to be an outside in fire in the departments that I run with here, and I run with a couple because we're small rural departments and we all back each other up. So we're kind of attacking from the sides. You know what I mean? We're not making that frontal attack. We're kind of coming at it from the sides. What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we do something similar, Chief, and I was just kind of thinking about what Bill was talking about earlier with the other picture, but our whole objective is to get to the seat of the fire as fast as possible. And a lot of times on these outside in, if you don't take the energy out of where it started and where it's continually to burn with all of the vinyl siding and the vinyl soffits, you're never going to control the interior space until you control where that energy's starting from. And so we will do a lot of the same things. We'll start where we've kind of gone to go to the seat of the fire, and it's predominantly spoken about from the interior, but in the fires that we're talking about now from outside in, this is on the exterior, and it makes it much easier to control the interior when the fire has started on the outside, if we can get those lines there. And yeah, Bobby, a lot of times we don't even have to get the line all the way to the back side. We can get to a corner and make a good attack and knock that down. Like you said, a lot of those are surface fires when we get there. They're not into the structure yet.
And so we started, I don't know what you're doing, Jimmy, but we start, you can jump in, we start asking our first dude to pull 2 lines automatic. Like, don't wait for the second dude to come pull your backup line. Like, if we think it's an outside in, we're pulling 2 lines right away.
Excellent point, boss. The good news is once the line gets around to the rear, it only takes 1 firefighter around that nozzle. It's a 2-line fire. Absolutely. And both lines are equally important. It's like the attached garage. But if you're having a good day and everything goes right, the line inside won't flow a drop of water if we're lucky. But both lines are equally as important. It's a 2-line fire. You're absolutely right. We got another picture there, Peter?
Yes, since we're talking tactics.
Yes.
I'm regressing back to the photo where we had the porch and the rear staircase on fire. And I think there's probably a lot of crews out there debating where that initial line would go, if it's going onto the interior or if it's going to the rear of the building. I think there's a lot of good arguments both ways. I am curious to hear Jimmy Davis's take on this, because they get a lot of those types of fires. But my experience with both types of tactics have sold me on taking that initial line, as Jason said, to knock the heat out of it and knock down the main, which is the main body of fire in the rear, and having crews simultaneously forcing entry to then get a line to the interior. But most of that fire is going to be knocked down from the rear of those structures. And it's also interesting just to know our district, as Chief Halton said, he had imagined that to be over a garage, and that would not be true in my district. And almost no garages are attached to the building. That would be into the rear detached garage. So that would be a 2-family dwelling for most of our area, where we have significant forcible entry challenges and a lot of barred windows. So almost the only way people can get out would be that front door. So we would have one line get stretched, and then as far as 2 lines simultaneously, practice that with your crews, because that's going to really heavily depend on staffing. We stretch one line and don't stretch the second one until the first line is actually operating, and then we'll stretch the second one. But it is going to be dependent on your crew and how well you guys can tackle that.
I know when we look at this.
So I love that tactics conversation for a second, Bill, if you don't mind me, just before we
go
to
ahead.
Soffit. But so to Daryl's point, that picture did have a garage over it. And that would be pretty common for us where I work, especially with these newer homes. Very, very, very common. And a lot of folks are building those kind of walkout porches for, like, the master bedroom now has a walkout porch and they can go outside. So we're seeing some of that. And so what we're thinking is, with the 2 lines, you can buy a lot of time if you can knock down, as Jason said, that energy on the outside. You can buy a lot of time to slow down the amount of interior progress that the fire will make. You know what I mean? So you can get in and get that quick search. If you have to, if you don't know if you got a clear building, like, we would try to knock down as much as we could of that outside energy, like Jason said, and then with that second line, or even without that second line, get in and get a search done as fast as we could, and then that second line get in and try to knock down that interior fire spread. So, but I love your point that for you'd have that would all be red. You wouldn't have the garage, but that's a really, I like to talk to tactics when I see a picture like that, because my head is just spinning.
We have a mutual friend, Ted Nee. Ted Nee produces some of the most brilliant simulations for training. And he has one on an attached garage. And, you pause it. You've seen them. We've all seen them. But for our viewers, if you could go, I guess you get them on either, maybe Peter could tell us, are they available on fireengineering.com, or you go to YouTube? But they are.
Yeah, we have them on fireengineering.com under simulations. So yeah, Ted's been supplying them. I'll put some links to them.
Absolutely brilliant. And his attached garage one is because we're talking about a similar type of fire where it's a 2-line fire. Guys, this is the top floor of an exterior hallway building. But whether you have interior hallways or exterior hallways, in my experience, most of your overhangs are actually an extension of the roof structure themselves. It definitely is here. So the underside that we call the soffit on this building consists of a thick layer of plaster on wire lath that is attached to the underside of the trusses by relatively small furring strips. So although this is very difficult to penetrate, it can come down and break your neck. I think we've all seen the video from Oklahoma City several years ago where this thing came down. I've got some other videos here. If we could go to the next slide, Peter. Okay. They knew what was going to happen. This is a condemned building, and they put their pike poles in the soffit vents. Now you look, that will break your frigging neck. And can you see it turn the corner like a row of dominoes? So yes, it's difficult to penetrate, but look at the dimension of the furring strips that are actually the connectors. They're ridiculously small. Leave the soffits alone if it's actually a part of the roof structure. Get inside and pop a hole in the drywall and direct the stream up that way. You'll know you're successful or not if the water runs out of the soffit vents. So next picture.
One quick point, we got
Yes.
a great comment from Nick Salame, and he says, if we don't address the main exterior fire first, it will continue to remain in control and will make the crews and tract occupants vulnerable. Exactly true. One suggestion, Bill, I think that Nick is brilliant, and I think we ought to invite Nick on for a future show, because Nick always seems to have tremendous insight, is a great participant. Nick, if you're interested in getting on any of the tactics conversations, either with this group or the instructors group, just shoot me an email, and we'd love to have you, because his comments are always so insightful, and I'm grateful for them. He also says,
On my bulletin board, I'm looking at it every day. I've got one of his articles from Fire Engineering. I think it was Modern Fire Dynamics Explained, but it's just a perfect overview and refresher of the research, the terms.
He's written a lot for us, and he's brilliant, and he's a good guy. So if you put his name into your browser, if you're listening to us online, if you put his name into the search engine on Fire Engineering, you'll bring up a lot of good stuff to read, and he's a great guy.
And so that's what we're going to do. The invitation is right here, Nick. All right, so here again, we're looking at the overhang of an exterior hallway building, but it could be the balcony of an interior hallway building. And if you go to the next picture, Peter. Okay, that's what it looks like on the inside. There's no reason to fool around with that soffit. Go inside. That's where the fire is. Pull the drywall ceiling. Step up on a kitchen counter or a A-frame ladder. In this case, you would want to pull the ceiling right inside the door. But that's how you access this fire. Leave the underside of that soffit out there alone. Next. I think we got some videos in here that are going to be pretty good.
Yeah, Cap, you want to make sure nobody's standing under that too, as far as water.
You better believe it, brother. You better believe it. I just sent you Jimmy, I sent you an article from the Chicago Tribune from 1955, if you remember, where my dad was trapped in a collapse with a bunch of good firemen. And what he told me was, and of course I was very young when this happened, I was 1 year old. Okay, what if the soffit was more routine drywall or lightweight reverse board and batten? Well, if it's outside because of the weather, it may be vinyl, as you said before, boss. It may be vinyl, or it may be very flimsy aluminum, which I believe we're going to have a picture of. What you're looking at there is wire lath, where these guys busted their butts pulling that, which was unnecessary and dangerous, because they could have gone right inside and popped a hole in that drywall ceiling.
The lath is kind of unusual in my neck of the woods. Most our soffits will be, lightweight reverse board and batten, or even some kind of particle board, or generally the cheapest crap the contractor has available.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't get the weather impingement or anything like that. So we don't see a lot of the lath, and we routinely would open it up on search for fire, especially on a residential or a commercial occupancy. We would always open the soffit if we could, just because we have tremendous fire spread. I've burnt down a couple of restaurants chasing fire around a soffit.
And there's two kinds here, guys. There's the bolt-on, which is typically your commercial occupancy. They give the building a facelift. can you get to the gabled, if, for lack of a better term, the gabled end? The problem is there's no fire stopping in these things. If you can get to the gabled end and pop a hole in there and drive your stream all the way across, the commercials tend to have bolt-ons. Or if this facade, this mansard extends up above the level of the roof, you're golden as long as the roof is intact. You're going to open up the back of this facade. And how did the fire start? It either started from fire licking from below, or it was a fluorescent, a neon sign on a commercial occupancy.
Well, on a couple of my outside ends, it was the soffit, like the fire came, it might have hit that outside vinyl or whatever, or sometimes like, I'm trying to remember, but I think it was the Carmel fire again. There was a evergreen bush and that lit up and that accentuated the fire right to that soffit. And like the Kyle Wilson fire, within 7 minutes of them getting there, the Mayday was called, 6 or 7 minutes, which is incredibly fast. And on this Carmel fire, as I remember, that fire, New Home was fully involved. Like when the crews arrived, and these were experienced people, there was no way to go in. There was no one. It was done. They basically put out, you know, everything that could catch fire had caught fire, and it was a May day at light wind, very dry, just like today is for us here. And Kyle Wilson, as I remember correctly, was middle of April, you know, mid-April. So
That's right. Yep.
This is the time of year we see these outside in fires. If my memory's right, I think Precious Faith Tabernacle was also this time of year. That was an outside in fire from a shed. Sofa Superstore, that was an outside in dumpster fire into the Soffit.
Right. Southwest Supermarket in Phoenix.
Exactly right. Brett Tarver. Yep.
Yes. Yes. Next picture there, Peter. Oh, here, watch this video.
And so they go and make the block set up on the Bravo Charlie corner. Engine 6, go ahead. White injector exposure for extension of the block block. 10-4. Alright, we're going to use the Delta side extension, but it's for Delta side exposure for extension. 3C.
Jeepers.
And Vincent Dunn
We've had
said,
a partial collapse on the front. We need an estimated gear. We got 2 firefighters down. We're saying 1 received.
you can kill it, Peter.
You go to front me a second alarm, front me a medic.
As Vincent Dunn says, like a giant stone wave, a facade. Now,
Yeah, something else to be careful of, even if it doesn't have a facade, is be aware if it has a parapet wall. Because
bingo.
a parapet may come down as well. This is where we really can gain that tactical advantage of, you know, before we started the show, we were talking about these portable master streams, the little tiny ones that spray 500 GPM or big lines. It's not just the volume of water, but you also get the safety and distance. And I think as construction is getting lightweight and old buildings are getting older, we need to, you know, continuously think about trying to keep distance as much as we can.
Right.
A friend of mine said he likes fire, but he likes a long distance relationship with fire.
Because those parapets, oftentimes they're cantilevered out, so they're not part of the roof, right, Darrell? In other words, they've got connectors, either rods, sometimes 2x4s, and if they burn out or if they're just, you know, getting ready to fail, that'll come down fast.
Yep. When the roof fails and the parapet wall will fail because those connectors.
Jimmy, I remember being a fire inspector in Wheaton, Illinois, and you call them a capstone. I call it a coping, where you could go up on the roof to the parapet and lift off the terracotta tile and start to take the parapet apart with your hands. The only thing holding it up is gravity. Now, it's got to be way more dangerous in the Chicago area because of your cycle of freezing and thawing.
Yeah, Cap, you nailed that too. You know, you're looking at an older, the city being much older and going through the the freeze and thaw cycles for decades and decades. Yeah. And, now that you mention it, how many of those caps or the capstones that we see actually falling off? I'll tell you what, that fire ground is a very dangerous place to be hanging around, and you got to keep your head on a swivel with that. They are loose, not to mention just the condition of the parapet wall. So we pay particular attention when working around parapets, and again, keeping a safe distance. And I think, Daryl, you mentioned that too, and I'm 100% with you. Use the reach of your stream. Use the effectiveness of the reach of your stream. You don't have to get right up there and put yourself in danger. Use the reach, keep your guys safe. That was a good point, Daryl.
Flanking for two reasons. We have a strip shopping center at our one of our training props. We teach those portable monitors, flanking position, hit above the show windows. Don't hit the facade at first. And you're at a flanking position for two reasons. One is collapse of the facade. Second is the flow path from a hostile fire event. And that was the problem with the angle, because the further you go back, the lower you need that stream. So, yes, sir, boss.
But just as our ombudsman here, just two good comments that we got. I just want, Lincoln Bureau says, if you think you have extension into the attic, use inspection holes in the ceiling as you make your way into the structure. Sure you don't get too far or get too much fire over your head. And then from our good friend Bill Carey, with First Arriving, great company, great guy, great group of people. He said fall is also significant for outside in, as homeowners can dispose of fireplace ash outside rear deck or against the house. So always great to hear from Lincoln Bureau and Bill Carey as well. And thank you very much for that.
Well, Lincoln, you're right. And I had my head, I'm not going to tell you where it was, but I ended up having a brown ring around my neck. Complacency. I went into a house that had a fire on the back deck and it got into the attic. And because of complacency, when the chief asked us to check for extension, I failed to pull the ceiling at the front door. I walked all the way towards the sliding glass door that led to the deck. We popped a hole. Oh, where's our breathing apparatus? Hanging down around our waist. Gloves right here, hood down here. And guys, it's one thing when you screw yourself up, but as a company officer, when you hurt your people, and we popped a couple of holes, and this plume of black smoke came out, and I thought we're either going to end up in the burn center or the cemetery. One of the worst mistakes I've ever made in my career, and please don't make that mistake. The man is at Lincoln. You're absolutely right. Start at your point of entrance and have a hose line with. And if you don't have one, stop until you get one, because otherwise you're just opening up the damper of a wood burning stove. Couldn't agree more.
Bill, I have some notes here that I wrote before we started the show.
Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
We didn't get too much to outside in fires, but my first note was complacency. And the reason I mention that is, we all have a different level of aggressiveness when it comes in as a structure fire. But when it comes as a outside fire, which we get a lot of outside fires and homeless encampments, a lot of vehicle fires, reported bushes on fire, things like that. It's not as exciting as multiple calls for a structure on fire. But my last 2 years, we probably had more outside in fires, mostly as a result of these homeless encampments, than I've had in my career. when we go to a report of an outside fire, we have to keep in mind that that's still an unchecked fire for 3, 4, 5, 7 minutes until you get on arrival. And it can easily be next to a building. And for us, with our construction, it's not usually spreading into the attic. It's usually just a wood frame, balloon frame building, and it's spreading, just the wood siding and then up that balloon frame bay. But yeah, definitely have all your stuff on, check where a hydrant location is and things like that. We get a single engine on a outside fire. And, every once in a while we have to call a box assignment, but definitely know it could be more than what the dispatcher told you.
And Daryl, doesn't your department really has probably one of the most historic outside in mass conflagration when you had wasn't it the Oakland Hills, and you had that, I can't remember what the plant was, but it almost explodes like creosote or gasoline when it catches fire, and it was wind driven. And I remember it went up a hillside, and it was 30 or 40 homes, if I'm mistaken.
It's called a eucalyptus tree.
Eucalyptus trees.
Yeah, but it was over 3,500 houses. It was which now at the time it was extremely significant fire in California fire history, but now it seems to be twice a year throughout the state of fires of that magnitude. But that brings up a point that we're often worried about inside out fires. At this time of year, we're starting to get to the point where a house fire, we're more overly concerned that it spreads to that vegetation.
Well, we didn't really even get into the whole aspect of the wind, right? And that fire, you guys had those, I think they're called phone winds, that's seasonal.
Yeah, it's similar. We call them Diablo winds in Southern California. They're called Santa Ana winds, but it's a offshore wind that's usually going to be hot, dry wind blowing downhill.
And Kyle Wilson was the wind was a contributing factor. I think in a lot of these outside in fires, the wind, you have to be so careful. And I know Jimmy always talks to it in his tactics classes about, being aware of your environment outside as well as your environment inside when you're setting up your attack. And for an outside in fire, if the wind is working against you, like that picture Bill showed, the wind's working against those firefighters in that picture. And that's a big deal, because if you open that front door to make that attack, well, as Bill said, you just made the perfect furnace.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. Recently, the city of Stockton lost a firefighter from a fire that was on the outside of a building, and they were forcing entry to check for extension inside. If there is a fire outside and you're checking for extension inside, one is the engine company needs to may often be working alone, so be good at your forcible entry skills, but also be aware that the occupants inside may not even be aware that there was a fire on the outside of the building. And I'm not sure of all the particulars of this case, but he was shot while forcing entry into a structure to check for extension. So be solid on your forcible entry skills, and be cautious. Go ahead.
I hate to interrupt again, Bill, but Jeff Betts, thank you,
Yes.
Jeff. He just wanted to mention the Westchester nursing home fire was an outside in fire. Thank you, Jeff. That's important. That was an important fire.
Yeah. I think we have a video here that I want to show before we say goodbye to everybody. Next video, Peter, or the next picture.
Stand by a second, Bill.
All right, brother. Oh, and by the way, you're about me making the mistake. And you think you're going to get away with it. Oh, yeah, this is a great video. Hey, a shout out to those guys in the metropolitan area around Denver. I like to show this video in my classes, and I show another fire department like they're setting up for a 1403 compliant burn, and a frigging somebody's home was on fire. Well, these guys, they mean business, and they're going to go after this. I think this is the South Metro Fire Department in Colorado. Hey, hats off to you guys. You guys came and you meant business. So go ahead and show this video.
Water! Come on, Lee, water, water, water! Do not reconnect. Water!
Which is the Delta 1 exposure.
Charge it, Schmidt. Water's coming, water's coming.
Charlie side. He's trying to hit the Alpha unit from the Charlie side.
Slow. Let him have it.
Command back up.
Low and work up.
17th level 1 to your south.
More pressure.
Go ahead. Command, your 10-minute ticker, and be advised we have a breathing problem asthma attack related to this at 9449.
Okay, we can kill that. I think this is important. Once this guy Schmidt, by the way, Schmidt, you're my hero. I actually ran into somebody that knows you, that used to be on a department in your area, Schmidt, if that's your name. Notice he can handle this by himself. He can handle it by himself. The rest of the guys, once the line's into position, wait a minute, are you laughing with me or at me there? So once you're once the line is in position, the other guys can go man another line or do something else once it's in position. So
Well, it's a two-line fire. Obviously,
there you go, brother.
Their occupant survival just went way up. Fire spread went way down. Great decision. Heads up firefighting. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts on the other side of that building, somebody's stretching to that front door right now, just waiting for them to say, go, go, go.
I'm gonna imagine so. They seem like heads up, sharp guys. But again, I use that as a contrast against guys that are lollygagging like it was a drill, and then these guys that mean business.
And
That was
nobody here is
awesome.
talking
That
about
was a
opposing
bomb
hose
video.
Ah,
That
Bravo
was
Sierra,
awesome.
boss. As long as they're communicated and coordinated. Communicated and coordinated. Forget about the opposing hose lines. That's theory. All right,
Exactly.
what are we up to here? Can we keep going for a while?
Sure, you're paying for it.
No, I ain't paying. Nobody's getting paid here. The only one getting paid is you.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right.
That's all right, and as it should be.
Sometimes nature is self-correcting.
Yes. Well, now, and Daryl's getting paid, I think. All right. So let's go to the next picture or video.
I think the next one now we're getting into Jimmy's territory. So stand by a second.
All right.
Line of the show, if that's your real name.
Mhm.
That seeing firefighters that good in stretching, choosing the right line, getting it in the right place and operating, that makes my day.
That had to be
They
a
deserve all the credit in the world.
that had to be
That was awesome.
200. That
There you
looked
go,
like,
Jimmy.
that like 200 feet, right? 200 feet.
They're in a minute, man. I'm envious of these guys. We're still using a triple layer load, and it is crap because you can't stretch it around corners or obstacles. Triple layer load is crap. Those guys meant business, and it was in a minute, man. I have a strong opinion about things. Okay.
Yeah. This is the very familiar one. We discussed this earlier. I'm thinking about the video show. That's exactly what would happen here. I think there's no better word to use than a coordinated fire attack. One line is one big line to the rear from a flanking position is going to take the energy out of this, and simultaneously lines are going to go inside this building. There's a good possibility, within the first couple minutes, we'll have multiple lines on the outside hitting the main body of fire, but also protecting exposures, but also multiple lines inside, chasing down or anticipating any fire extension into this building.
Excellent.
And a good flanking attack will avoid breaking those windows.
Good point. Good point.
So
Excellent.
Jimmy, is this gonna, for the city of Chicago, would you typically see a 2.5 to the rear and then 1 3/4 lines getting into the, it looks like maybe the second, third floor?
Yeah, Daryl, they're doing it. You know how we could say big city tactics are transferable to other departments. What this requires, yes, is a 2.5 1 1/8 or 1 1/4 line from the exterior. I think you mentioned that too, Chief, hitting it from a flanking position. But that line again is serving the two purposes: knock down the main body of fire and protect the exposures. Now inside would be, they'd be stretching 1 3/4. Again, keeping with the tenets of engine company work, protecting means of egress and protecting the interior stairwell. So you're accomplishing everything well, but the key to this too is a coordinated fire attack, because you have multiple companies working at the same time. You want to make sure that the interior and exterior reports coincide and check out.
The other reason
Excellent
we're going
point.
with the flanking, Jimmy, is we had one of these things just fall.
Mhm.
And it was a collapse zone. Obviously, with this one, the collapse zone there could be, 40, 60 feet. So
Jimmy, can you speak on this? About every year in the city of Chicago, there's a party where people have overloaded a deck or rear porches, and they got that rhythmic swaying, which is like what brought down the overhang at in Kansas City with the tea dances. And that puts an impact load, and almost every year that happens in the city of Chicago. You want to speak about that for a second?
Yeah, Cap, my memory serves me correct. There was a rash of actually fatal
Yes.
porch collapses anywhere, I'm going to say, market from 10 to 12 years ago. Very common. This all started in the spring and summer months, overloading the back porches. However, what became of that was some really robust building codes, and the city had porch inspectors that went around answering complaints and just going out and inspecting these back porches and had them fix them. We have a lot of dilapidated, and again, I'm looking back then through that lens, a lot of porches that had to be redone. Enough was enough, and they kind of stopped that. And as of recently, there really hasn't, at least my knowledge, any significant or noteworthy collapses from overcrowding. So they're using some robust timber and one heck of connectors on this as well. So they really put this the serious to the matter and fixed it.
And I think the inside and outside size up is so important.
Well, they have to coincide, correct. Again, using that word coordinated fire ground. It's just not a fancy term. Interior and exterior reports have to coincide. There was another picture on here, Pete, if you can fast forward it or move it to the next one. This was the one that was very particular interest to me. Back porches, once they're consumed, you basically have the ruins or the carcass of the back porch. Now you're looking at a picture where 3 firemen fell down these porches. 3 of them simultaneously fell down from the second floor all the way to the ground floor. They suffered some injuries. Now, the reason why they went out there, they thought they were making a search of another room. So they stepped foot to a porch, as you can see, that was never even there. They suffered some pretty good injuries. My point on this is that you got to communicate this on the fire ground. You know, a simple emergency or urgent transmission. Be advised, companies working on the scene, there are no porches. If there's a fireman or an officer, police, they have doorways, so these guys don't tumble down these back porches. Some things are preventable, but we have to do a better job at policing and identifying very dangerous conditions.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a fall if you look at that.
Look at those bars on that first floor window too. That's another that those don't look like, I don't see any quick release on those bad boys.
No.
No,
Daryl, I
not
know
only
in
that.
Oakland,
Yeah,
Oakland, Miami, Chicago, burglar bar capital of the world. You got any more pictures, Jimmy?
yeah, I wanted to show you that before the fire.
Holy,
This is
what a
just,
freak. My old man would call that a battleship.
oh yeah, we call that a lumberyard with
Yes.
open air. You know, like I said, it has plenty of O2 to take off, plenty of O2 to gain some momentum and energy. Next thing you know, this thing is going to rise horizontally and laterally. Next thing you know, this thing's in a cock loft.
God,
But I wanted to show you just a depiction of what you have in the back, and then identifying your fire conditions. And we talked about locating the fire in the rear and bringing the water back there to put an end to this story quickly. But again, it just goes to show you, again, how dangerous and how much, how much available fuel you had back there. But not only that, once this thing starts going, you got that radiant and conductive heat. And our buildings are very close in proximity. Next thing you know, you got exposures going or other sets of back rear porches. So you will have a lot of problems on your hands if you don't make the correct decisions. And I wanted to bring one other point too, and I was thinking about that, how some good heads up company officers, second engine, will bring that rig back there and they will open that deck gun, using the deck gun, and then pull out of that alley. And while they're pulling out, they're dropping their 2.5-inch lines. That's another option.
you know, about that deck gun, Jimmy, there's a paranoia in the fire service about running out of tank water. We're not fighting a Class B fire. We don't have to completely put it out and it's going to have to reflash like a Class B fire. You're going to take the energy out of the fire. You guys are famous. I think it was Richie Stack that had that, an excellent webcast on fire engineering. Dump your tank and then lead out. You had a fire in a sporting goods store during your civil disturbances, and it was a delayed response at Engine 98, downtown company on Miracle Mile, came in there and kicked that fire right in the solar plexus. Okay, we got it. 5-minute warning. Okay. So, guys, this is absolutely great that we can discuss these things, and at the end of the day, always have more to talk about than we have the ammunition that we prepared ourselves with. So that is good. One thing is for certain: next month, Nick, you're on. So we will collaborate on another topic if we're going to go to something else. But I understand. And also, Peter, heads up on your part, man. Triple decker in New England.
Mhm.
Comparing that last and the Branson condo. Absolutely. Yeah. So history repeats itself.
Mm.
And it's the same fire problem, just same clowns, different circus. Heads up to Key, our friends at Key, and until next month, God bless you. Keep you safe.
One
Yes,
quick
sir.
shout out before you close us out, Bill. On behalf of all of us, we've all been educated by an incredible gentleman named Joe Barry. He was on, I believe it was 1, 2, 3 ladder in the Bronx.
Yes.
But Joe has penned several pieces on these kinds of fires. He's been a student of this topic. Joe was invited today, but he's ill. He's out with a very bad case of laryngitis. And Peter's going to link to his articles. And if you have, Joe is an incredible gentleman. If you have questions about it, or you'd like to bring in just an eloquent speaker, a man who's just a dynamic force on this particular issue, it would be Joe Barry. And
I have his slide. This fuel-rich fire is starving for oxygen. Venting for life without the protection of a hose line will become a tactic of the past. He's another guy that we got to invite out.
Yeah, Joe Barry is not only educated and experienced, he's also just incredibly passionate and understanding. And he also, although he's FDNY, he's got a deep understanding of smaller department operations and volunteer operations. He's truly just a wonderful, wonderful guy. A lot of my education I owed to Joe Barry, and always be extremely grateful to him. But if you're interested in this topic, please put Joseph Barry into the search engine at Fire Engineering, and Pete's going to link his article on outside in fires. And but he's written a great deal, and he's a great guy.
Wonderful. You know what? We surround ourselves with like-minded people that bring us up. And this is the result, and this is why we have these lively conversations. And not only us here, but the people that are kind enough to send their messages in and participate. And we really appreciate that. And it really enhances our whole presentation here. So until next month, everybody, I'm looking forward to it already. Nick, you'll be with us. And God bless. Stay safe.
God bless you. God bless America.